fileless malware, where the no file is written onto the disk, where for a very long time these attackers remain in the system undetected. Ransomware, which used to be simply encrypting the file, has evolved to a tactic called a double extortion. An average person with no technical knowledge, in fact, can launch the ransomware attack.
Hello and welcome everyone to yet another thought-provoking episode of our podcast series Tech Baithak, the ultimate platform where technology meets insight. Today we shall be discussing a topic that has never been more relevant. I'd like to call it adapting SOC strategies to the evolving threat landscape. To shed light on this pressing issue, we are joined by Mr. Ravi Kumar. Mr. Ravi is himself a seasoned strategist and a technology visionary with profound expertise in cybersecurity operations. Brace yourself for an episode of practical learning, deep insights, and forward thinking strategies. Hi, Raviji. Very good morning, and thank you so much for being a part of this podcast.
Thanks, Ashwin, for having me. Pleasure is on mine.
How are you, sir?
I'm good. It's a lovely morning.
Raviji, to just set the tone for the podcast and for all our viewers, why don't you start off by actually telling us what exactly is a security operations center, or what we commonly call as a SOC? And what are some of its primary functions that are key to the organization's cybersecurity alignments and initiatives?
The Security Operations Center, or SOC, is a nerve center for any organization security initiatives. So it's a dedicated team and facility that work together to protect the organization's information security assets. And if I have to slice this SOC, so it can be basically categorized into three parts. One is the mission of the SOC, another is the roles within the SOC, and third is tools and technologies that are used in the SOC. So mission of the SOC is to identify, detect, analyze, and respond to security incident in a real time. And basically this SOC does log analysis. It ingests logs from various sources. Like it can be your endpoint, it can be your system log, even for that matter user behavior, and it identifies patterns which are not normal. So once threat has been identified, the probable action can range from isolating the impacted system to doing a forensic or maybe an advanced troubleshooting. And incident response is also a very key factor in SOC. It ensures that the incidents are the impact of the incident is contained and systems are recovered as soon as possible. Now coming to the roles and responsibilities, SOC manager is someone who manages the entire operation. So he basically ensures that the SOC is in line with organization security strategy. He is also one who formulates the policies and procedures and ensures that these are implemented to be either the organization standard, or if it's a regulated entity, it has to ensure that they follow the standards laid by the regulators. And of course, the SOC manager is the one who also manages the people or the SOC engineers. The other role I would say is the SOC analyst. So the SOC analysts are the one who monitors, triages, and sometimes even escalate the incident. So there are three levels within SOC. The level 1 engineer typically works on mostly the monitoring job.
That is what they commonly known as the L1 engineer, or the L1 support is what they call it. Yes.
And the level 2 engineer will perform the triage. And you must have guessed by now, level 3 engineer works on more complicated issues within the SOC. One of the role within the SOC is the threat hunter role. So it's a proactive role where an engineer works on the hypothesis and proactively tries to identify the threats before they manifest into a full-blown attack. So it's a kind of proactive role. Now there are other roles which doesn't exactly fall within SOC, but one can argue it's a part of security function. So we have a VAPT engineer which does a vulnerability assessment, penetration testing to find weaknesses within the system. And we also have a forensic analyst. Basically, it does investigation and also collected the logs and basically the digital evidence. And it tries to identify the patient zero or the origin of the attack and what is the scope or the range of the attack. And of course, incident response is a key function of the SOC. And once the incident has happened, the primary function of the incident response team is to ensure that the systems are recovered as soon as possible with minimum impact. Correct. So these are the main roles within the SOC. And coming back to tools and technologies, so the security information event management (SIM) is the heart of the SOC. Okay. So SIM is basically this centralized tool where logs from all different tools are ingested in SIM, and it works basically on artificial intelligence and machine learning with a flavor of UABA, user and entity behavior analytics. So how does this work exactly? No, I mean the AI has been around for more than 50 years, right? Machine learning is something which gained traction from 2010 onwards. So just to give how this correlation works within the SIM tool. So you get an, let's say, incident where a user is trying to access a legitimate user, authenticated user by the way, is trying to access a file where he doesn't have a sufficient permission. So you get a low severity alert. You get another low severity alert. Probably the user is logging at a time which is not normal. He is logging at, let's say, 1 a.m. in night. Abnormal, yeah, correct. And there is a third incident which is showing as a user is probably logging from an IP address which is showing as a North Korea. Okay, so when you look at these three incidents in isolation, these are three low severity incidents. But with the power of correlation, this same uses the AI/ML technique to correlate this three incident, low severity incident, to a high severity critical incident. So that is the power of SOC. Of course, there are other tools which are which fall within this SOC, and those tools can range from EDR, XDR, your privilege access management, your web application firewall, your next generation firewall, proxies. So the range of the tool is growing. Now we have breach attack simulation as well, which mostly falls from the red teaming perspective. But these fall under the umbrella of security. So this is the overall architecture, or I would say how a typical SOC works, and overall function, roles, and technologies that fall within the SOC.
Well, Raviji, that was quite a simple breakdown of what SOC is, I would say. So for our viewers, Raviji, please correct me if I'm wrong. So it works on a tri-layer mechanism wherein there is an L1 engineer that monitors all the alerts, be it all types of alerts, be it low severity, medium severity, or high severity. The L2 engineer or the group of engineers then triage those alerts. And then at the top, I would say there is an L3 engineer that actually works on all these alerts that have been escalated by the lower run, which the L1 and the L2 entities. Am I right on that?
Exactly.
Correct. So, on that note, Raviji, in your experience as the AVP of IT, what would you say are some of the significant changes that have occurred recently in the threat landscape in over the recent past? If you can just break it down for our viewers.
Cyber attackers are now using the sophisticated technologies, and those are now targeted attacks. For example, the fileless malware, where the no file is written onto the disk, or it can be advanced persistent threat, where for a very long time these attackers remain in the system undetected, and some of these attacks are now very common. In fact, the ransomware, which used to be simply encrypting the file, has evolved to a tactic called a double extortion. So double extortion means that if the attackers demand ransom first to release the decryption key, and once the organization do that, they again demand ransom or the Bitcoin to ensure that their sensitive data is not released in the public domain. Other challenge I see is the ransomware as a service. So with the proliferation of ransomware as a service, an average person with no technical knowledge, in fact, can launch the ransomware attack by leveraging the services offered by these attackers in darknet or underground hacking forums. Now, due to this, there is a significant surge in number of ransomware attacks that has been happening globally. Other areas which I see is the important one is the attack on the supply chain. So attackers are now targeting the supply chain itself with an aim to exploit the vulnerabilities in the third party or the service provider. Most I would say popular example, such as the SolarWinds attack would show that attack on this trusted vendor can result in large scale uh, data breaches, not just for with this trusted vendor but also their client organization. So this shift has forced us to have a holistic view of the security. So organization have to think not just securing their assets, but also think of a security of their third party vendors or partners, right? Another area is on the use of the automation and AI. Using these technologies, the attackers are able to penetrate with I would say more targeted attacks, and those also happening on the large volume. So with the use of AI, attacker can basically automate the I would say the vulnerability scans, and also some of the, and a good example will be they can craft a phishing email with very good precision, and it will be very difficult to identify whether the phishing email has been written through automation, through AI, or somebody has manually typed those phishing emails. Another areas will be, it will be able to analyze large volume of data and identify most critical assets. So with the use of these AI and automation technologies, the attacker basically can launch more attack in very less time, and at a scale I would say which previously maybe couple of years ago was considered unimaginable, right? Another area which I feel everybody is aware about the work from home culture, especially after the pandemic. So before pandemic, having a firewall in data center and was considered to somewhat a robust security. But with the pandemic and the work from home, right? So companies and organizations have become borderless. So now the data now no longer resides in data center, but it can reside in employees is probably sitting in his drawing room. So with the rapid adoption of the cloud technology and work from home culture, this security was even like an afterthought, and it's becoming very difficult for organization to have a consistent security policy for on-premise, as well as the cloud. So that is the another challenge I would say, which is kind of which has emerged. Another area which is a very concerning is the deepfake and social engineering attacks. So these attacks basically impersonate legitimate users. So with the impersonate users voice and video with an aim to either entice the employee to yield sensitive information, and also they can basically result in unauthorized transaction, because these employees would think that a legitimate user is asking them to transfer the money, right? We have also seen an extensive use of deepfake in general elections, both in US and recently in India. So this is a very concerning when it comes to the emerging threat landscape. Other attack vectors is the we have been using the apps, right? Especially after COVID, we every damn thing is available on app. Creator, you have to order a food, you're using an app. You are booking Ola, Uber, or other logistic. So for every service there is an app. But behind this app, there is an application programming interface, APIs that are working. So as these apps, have grown exponentially, there is the I would say the threat landscape has increased, and the attackers are now targeting these applications or the APIs. So the most common attacks are happening either they fail, they bypass the API authentication, or they perform a DOS attack on these APIs. And then there is also geopolitical situation. We are seeing the war. We have just seen a war between Ukraine and Russia. There is a war between Israel and Hamas, right? So these national state actors, especially the one who are having adversarial relationship, they use the attacks as a part of their state-sponsored geopolitical strategy. And activities such as the espionage operations, which are done to destabilize the nation, are very common right nowadays. So the financial institutions, energy sectors, or the defense sectors are the prime target for these nation-state actors, with an aim to disrupt either the intellectual property or their economies. So these are the one. Of course, we are hearing more about the Internet of Things, IoT. So as more and more IoT devices get connected to the internet, see, these IoT devices were not created keeping security in mind. So exploiting these IoT device, one can get access to large networks. So these are the main trends in threat landscape which has been growing recently in recent years.
Right. Raviji, I must say I'm surprised and equally scared, I would say, hearing all these different types of strategies that are used by the criminals and the state actors and all the rogue actors, to be more specific, as you mentioned, because that makes, I'd say, they're also giving us, like, just a humorous take on this entire issue, that they're also giving us a run for our money, isn't it? Because we have to bring in our A game. Our aim is to facilitate a very strong cybersecurity posture for our clients, for all the companies that we work with, and in general as well. That is something that I feel that it's immensely strong, because we keep on talking about fifth generation warfare. Uh, Cybersecurity and information warfare is the fifth generation warfare. So I feel that as a nation, if we want to progress, our information has to be really, really secure. So it's surprising, but deep down scary also, I'd say, at the same time. And that is why I feel that why a robust cybersecurity posture is so important in today's digital landscape. I also 100% I agree with you, Raviji, because all these aspects of cyber mishaps or cyber threats, I believe they touch all our lives as well. I mean, not just as a corporate, but as an individual as well. Because, I mean, how many times do we receive spam credit card calls, phishing emails, wherein you rightly mentioned that the attacker is actually trying to force us, or rather to sensitivize, revealing some personal information so that he can probably take advantage of it. So definitely, and that is why, as I said, that we have to be, we just, not as corporates, but also individuals, need to develop that keen sense of smartness. I think if I can say that, cyber smartness, if something, I don't know if it makes sense, but something like that, so that we are smart enough to kind of not be in a situation where we are taken advantage of and then regret it later. So in continuation with that same thought, Raviji, what are some of the key strategies that SOCs or security operations centers should actually adapt to keep up with the changing threat landscape?
It's a very good question. So SOC and security team have to up their game to match these smart hackers. So we have to shift our mindset from reactive to proactive to predictive. So this SOC team has to basically, integrate with the threat intelligence sharing platforms and integrate feeds. Some of these feeds are community feeds which are open for all. For example, your Virus Total or Alien World. Some of the feeds are premium, which require subscription, and all the major security vendors share these feeds. And some of the feeds are shared by the regulators like NCIPC or CERT. So the advantage of this threat intel feeds is that we as an organization will be aware about the latest threats, zero-day vulnerabilities, and the attack patterns. The other area which can be a proactive approach is the organizations can think of deploying honeypots. So honeypots are basically deployed to mislead the attacker. So while the attacker can think that they have got real access to some vulnerable server, it's correct, but actually it's a decoy which is kept. So the advantage of honeypot is that we are able to analyze the attack pattern, and you can leverage it to identify IOCs, and of course we can block these IOCs and prevent those attackers from coming to the production environment. Other area is the threat hunting is of course the proactively done, and it can reveal the tactics, techniques and procedure, TTP as they call it, along with the IOCs. There is also predictive threat hunting that can be performed with the help of AI and behavioral analytics to predict when the attack will happen based on the historical data and emerging trend. So this is where the SOC engineers have to, or security professionals have to bring their A game to predict when the attack is going to happen. There is one more area where I think the organization can focus on is subscribing to the darknet monitoring. So darknet monitoring is basically monitors. It provides it's also called a brand monitoring, where the underground forums. So it's a place where hackers try to sell the leaked data. Okay, it can range from your credentials to the database, and other sensitive information. So the organization will be able to identify that which data has been leaked if they are using a darknet monitoring. And yes, apart from that, zero trust is something which is need of an hour, because as I was speaking earlier, the organizations had begun borderless. So it is very important to secure the identities or the access. So zero trust basically principle mandates that never trust, always verify. So irrespective if the user is sitting within the network, or user is connecting from outside, or even it can be a system, it will always authenticate in form of multi-factor. It can ask you for an OTP. And then it also works on a principle of least privilege, which means that the user systems or applications are given only the required access to perform their duties. So zero trust is, I would say, a need of an hour today. Apart from that, the SOC needs to have an incident response plan. I would say a documented incident response plan. So in the event of an incident, it will help to minimize the impact. And this incident response plan needs to be reviewed and updated regularly. Other areas where I think SOC can focus. It is kind of shift-left approach, where the security should be shift-left. Basically means that security should be built during the start of the software of SDLC cycle. So while the softwares are getting developed, they can use the SAS tool, or which is static application security testing, to identify vulnerabilities in the library. And even the runtime scan can be done with the DAST tool to identify once these applications are built, what are the vulnerabilities they are carrying. DevSecOps is one area where everyone should be thinking of going. So DevSecOps essentially means integrating security within the DevOps lifecycle. So it's kind of automating and putting a toll gates within this SDLC lifecycle. Another area I think the SOC is already focusing. Most of the organizations are looking to automate, adopt the automation when it comes to SOC. So with the growing volume of the security incidents, it's very important to for the SOC to find automation. So the automation will help SOC engineer to perform their routine tasks of log analysis, triage, or incident response. And the main advantage of automation is that it will basically help reduce the alert fatigue, because given the volume of alert, it is not possible for a human to work on this number of alert. And it will also increase the agility, accuracy, and scale of operation. So the security engineer, with the help of automation, will be able to I would say, deal with this large volume of incident more effectively. Another area which I feel is most important when it comes to SOC is the I was talking about the API gateway rack. So with the help of the API security gateway, you can put certain controls on, let's say, the authentication or rate limiting. They and even they have IP whitelisting, schema validation. So these control will ensure that the APIs are secure. Okay, and I would say, as I was speaking to you, before this podcast, that in spite of having all tools and technologies, uh, it's not just important to have these tools, but also uh, have an effective implementation of these tools, because more often than not, the organization misses a very key part. So it's very important to perform these reconciliation activities to check whether your security agents, it can be your DLP agent, it can be SIM agent, it can be a VDR agent or proxy agent, or it can be a decoy agent. These are deployed in 100% of your systems, because if one of these agents goes missing, these logs will not get generated, and this thing will never come to know about an alert, and of course it can lead to so basically the observability is a key. And of course one area where we organization also need to look at is the integration with SIA. So whenever we are procuring a new product, we must ensure that it has the connectivity, or we can basically pass the all types of log to SIA. And it's very important to do a reconciliation uh, periodically to ensure that all the logs are getting pushed to these SIAs, because many times because of some communication issues or agent corruption, these logs are never get pushed to the SIM, and whenever there is an event, and then no SOC team identifies that the logs were not getting pushed to the SIM, right? And yes, and one I think area is one of my favorite is to have an offensive approach for breach attack simulation. It's basically a red teamer's job. Okay, so the by leveraging the breach attack simulation, performing the exercises, raking, okay, the basically the SOC team can know the efficacy. Okay, because there is no other no real method to test the SOC efficacy, because on paper everything looks okay, right? So BAS breach attack simulation exercises will is an exercise which tries to simulate real life attacks in a controlled way. That for me is the game changer, and one of the cool trends, if I can say. And of course, we also need to do a periodic review of SIM rules. We need to see, let's say out of 100 rules, how many rules are triggering alerts. It might happen that these rules are not properly configured and maybe the condition is not matched. So it's very important to do a periodic review of these SIM rules from time to time so that they detect critical alerts, like it can be a power cell execution or it can be your lateral movements, right? So all these different conditions, you need to have a rule which is working. Many times I've seen that maybe because the reference set is not given correctly, the rule is not able to pick up. So we have to ensure that there is a periodic review of the SIM tools. So these are some of the emerging trends. I think the avish SOB operation should look to adopt. And yeah, these are the basically the top trends.
Quite elaborate, Raviji, I must say. So, there are a lot of learnings for me as well. To be specific, I'd say three key learnings in terms of the strategies that SOCs must adapt to keep up with the evolving threat landscape. And let me just also break this down for the viewers. So, the first one would be to change the approach from reactive to proactive to predictive, right? And the second one, an equally important approach would be uh, definitely you can subscribe to a tool, definitely you can implement a lot of tools that you feel may be very critical to your organization's cybersecurity initiatives, but the tool needs to be configured and implemented in such a manner so that it results in the intended or the desired outcome for that particular organization. And third, I believe the most critical of all is that it should be integrated with the SIM tool or with the SIM setup that one has within an organization or a company. So these are probably the three key takeaways for me, Raviji. Uh, in continuation with that, called Raviji, uh, as far as the emerging trends are concerned, we have discussed that okay, ZTNA is one of the key buzzwords that we keep on hearing in various summits, and even I believe all of us, all stakeholders like you, all organizations as well, are laying a lot of stress on ZTNA as a principle because it's more of an attitude shift, I would say, that we shouldn't trust anyone and we should verify everyone regardless of his or her designation or whatever may be the criteria, but we should always verify or always try to verify anyone that enters into the network or the system. Uh, this was all of it that we know today. What, in your opinion, Raviji, are some of the trends that you can envision as a seasoned technology visionary that could actually shape the future of cybersecurity as a domain?
That's a good question, Ashwin. So with this organization moving to cloud, so already I am seeing that the uh, SOC is also moving to cloud because there is now there the infrastructure is basically hosted out of cloud. So they are using the cloud native services, especially the cloud SIM is now getting traction, and no, from I would say last 2 years at least, I've seen that the cloud SIM is something where people are more willing to invest since their infrastructure is hosted out of cloud.
Right.
Also, I've seen that the small organizations which probably doesn't have the resource or skill set or maybe budget to go for a full blown SOC operations, they are they have an option to leverage SOC as a service which is offered by the service provider. So with minimum investment, the SOC as a service is something where these small to medium sized organizations are realizing value. Another area, I mean, zero trust is something which you and me already discussed about. Automation is something which also discussed. So these are the main areas, I would say, and of course there is a managed detection and response (MDR), which is kind of resonates with SOC as a service. So these are the, I would say, 2 to 3 areas. Yes, of course, generative AI is something which is a game changer. Correct. So many of the service provider is now coming up, or I should say they are already uh, uh, launched the product GenAI for security. That is more for the cloud infrastructure, SOC which is hosted on the cloud, because the GenAI for security is something which is a game changer because it acts as a evidence guidance. So with the help of natural language processing, a SOC engineer doesn't have to be highly skilled. He just need to type. Okay, tell me how to enable the multi-factor authentication. He will get a detailed step kind of remediation guidance which can be used by the SOC engineer. GenAI, for me, I've seen that the organizations are already using that. We all know that the softwares are made up of libraries, right? But during the development phase itself, the with the help of GenAI, the developers can find the vulnerable libraries. And yeah, so those are the I would say the top trends, and I see that the industry is already moving towards these uh, I mean trends.
So the future definitely seems promising, Raviji, from what I can understand, and seems like there is a lot of catching up we all have to do to keep our system secure, to keep our information secure, and in the end, keep us secure. I would rather say, which is interlinked to all these parameters. So, also, Raviji, I would like to speak about uh, one of the key phenomena that has just happened, which is the introduction of the SEBI CSCRF framework by SEBI back in August just this year itself. Because a lot of, this definitely applies to all the listed organizations, but especially from what I'm seeing is there is a lot of hype amongst the BFSI, amongst the fintech companies, amongst the lending institutions about this particular framework. Can you please break down for our viewers as to what are some of the important operational controls or guidelines, if I can say that within that fall within this SEBI CSCRF framework, and how does it impact the functioning of an organization?
It's a good question, Ashwin. So the you're right. The SEBI released the Cybersecurity and Cyber Resiliency Frameworks (CSCR) in August this year, and it applies to all regulated entities. So the regulated entities can range from depository like us to exchanges, clearing corporation, asset management company, brokers and sub brokers. So if I had to just highlight the key pointers, because it supersedes the earlier circulars which were released by SEBI. So if I have to highlight the key pointers or the takeaway which are different this time, so it talks about the quantification of the SOC efficacy. That for me is a standout. They call it as a Cyber Capability Index, CCI. So they have given an annexure, which is truly something which you can quantify. As I was talking about, the integration story, log integrations, and the agent reconciliation, and the initiative that you take in the organization. So you can put a score basically to the annexure which is given by the SEBI, and basically that score has to be shared with SEBI. Along with that, we were discussing earlier the breach attack simulation. So SEBI has mandated for all REs, excepted with an exception with small size organization, of course, that they need to have a mandatory breach attack simulation exercises along with a regular VAPT and audit done regularly. And along with these exercises, whatever observations they have has to be closed within a stipulated timeline. So for me, quantification of the cybersecurity, is very important, and that is something is which for me, as a security analyst, is a key takeaway from the latest, CSCRF circular.
Correct. Indeed, I think for all of us, this was, we started off as a podcast, but we actually ended up, I can categorize this, Raviji, as a whole master class on cybersecurity because indeed your experience and some of the deep insights from your side have really uh, provided us with a clear understanding as to how organizations should go about with respect to their cybersecurity strategy. So thank you so much for your time, Raviji. Any closing thoughts from your side before we sign off?
I would say that this cybersecurity is not just about the technology, but it's also about people, process, technology, and I would say the mindset of constant vigilance. Okay. And as we were discussing earlier, that no, it's very important for organization to innovate, and adopt to technologies, such as automation, zero trust. So they have to up their game, because the adversaries have already using the advanced technologies of Gen AI and other targeted attacks which we discussed earlier. So this will be the key takeaway, or the message, I would say, that the mindset of constant vigilance is a must apart from the traditional approach of people, process, and technology.
Well. So definitely people, process, and technology are the three key pillars within cybersecurity, but it's the mindset of constant vigilance that truly makes the difference. That for me is the highlight of this particular answer, viewers. And thank you so much for your time. I'm super excited to share all these learnings with you. And a big thank you to all our viewers who have tuned in to watch this podcast. Stay tuned until the very next episode of our podcast, which is Tech Baithak. Until then, stay safe, stay secure, and keep innovating. Thank you.